I kept in touch with quite a few people. So what probably wasn't as many official conversations, happening as earlier. But I'd say probably just over 2 weeks ago, heard from him, and agent had a couple talks with Mike, and I was pretty excited. This is a place that was pretty special for my family in 2023. And then we didn't hear from him for a few days, and I kind of almost had thought, okay, maybe that wasn't meant to be and wasn't going to happen. And then we heard from him last week, right in the middle of everybody going through the flu. So it was a little harder time in the family with 3 of the 4 kids sick, myself, and thankfully my wife and our youngest didn't have it. But it was kind of a slower process because of that. Just trying to kind of think through everything and get healthy before I made a decision. But then we were able to get something together and something that makes sense and figure out a build up, and here we are.
The last 2 off seasons, before you signed with the Orioles, before you signed first, you signed really quickly.
Yeah.
Were you kind of antsy because you didn't sign?
Honestly, I was not antsy. I went into last year not really knowing what to expect. Obviously, once you get to 36, 37 years old, if you have a down year, then that could be your last year. So I went into last year understanding playing in St. Louis, playing at home, that if that was my last year, then I was content with it. And, thankfully I threw the ball well and expected to have another opportunity definitely sooner than this. But I think because of that mindset, I wasn't as antsy. I was really enjoying the offseason with the kids and with Elizabeth and seeing family. So as it took time, I'd probably joked with my agent too many times. The next guy that would sign, I'd be like, okay, well, I got to be next. But it was all jokes because I was pretty content with where I was. I kind of knew that if the right opportunity came up, then I'd have a decision to take it or not. And if opportunities didn't come up, then you're telling me I had to stay home with my kids and wife. Okay, that wasn't going to be a big deal. That was going to be a lot of fun too. So, so I think that was probably some of the hardest part. Is I'd kind of, not quite reserved that it was over, but I had been pretty content spending a lot of time with the kids. So leaving them, on Thursday night was pretty tough.
How did the kids and Elizabeth, did you have conversations with them about this opportunity and just overall opportunities and how they kind of
lots of conversations throughout the offseason, about locations and about possibilities. And, we'd hear from a team and it'd be a minor league deal, so we'd kind of usher that one off. But, we had a conversation probably about Baltimore, I'd say, 3 or 4 weeks ago, just maybe a week before Mike called the first time. And, obviously playing at home last year, I got a little spoiled, driving to the field every day and tucking the kids in and taking them to school. So, we tried to find an opportunity that was more in the Midwest if it was possible, and, those just didn't come up. So, but then as we talked about Baltimore, it's like, this was a place that we really enjoyed. We know the clubhouse really well, and, it was one of the places where we thought, if there's somewhere to play after playing in St. Louis, this is one of those places that would be pretty special and fun to be a part of. So, when they called, it was probably a week later. And when they called a week later, it was pretty cool timing, the fact that we had just kind of, talked about this place and everything that it meant to us and these guys. So, pretty cool timing.
When do you feel like you need to pitch? How long do you feel like this build-up is going to take for you?
So I've thrown probably 4 bullpens of 50 to up to 70 pitches. But like I said, last week we had the flu, so I didn't throw one this week because I just felt, pretty bad through the weekend. But I would say, a fairly normal spring training. I'm probably ahead of schedule where I normally would be coming into spring because of those bullpens. So, we've got it kind of laid out, just talking with Frenchie a little bit and kind of see how we feel. But I'd say a couple bullpens and get into live BPs, and then, see how I'm building up with that. And, we can kind of adjust the innings load, really. I think normally in spring training, my first outing would be 2 innings. So, probably try to avoid having a 2-inning outing just for the sake of the bullpen and everybody else that would have to cover innings. But, try and do a little bit of a normal buildup. And, I think I do have the ability to speed it up, an outing here or there just because of, I think, where I'm showing up coming into camp.
You were here for only 1 year, Kyle, but you made quite your mark on the clubhouse. A lot of guys speak very highly of you. What does that mean to you to know that a lot of the young guys in here speak that way about you, but also was that a factor in you wanting to come back here?
Yeah, definitely a factor. I think every time you join a new team, you're kind of, playing it out in your head. What's the locker room like? How am I going to fit in? What's the dynamic going to be? One of the questions I got was, how do I think I'd, joining camp this late and then, joining the team late would be? Well, I think that was an easy question for me. Hopefully I can still fit in with these guys, and I know I'm 2 years older now, so hopefully they don't hold that against me. But I think I fit in probably the same places I did a couple years ago. So, but yeah, I think in the game and everybody's probably pretty similar about their workplace, but there's so many other things going on other than work, and you want to try to have an impact on people in a positive way if you can, and that's really what I try to do and what Elizabeth and I try to do wherever we go. So I'm thankful that these guys welcomed us a couple years ago, and we were able to have so much fun, and because they had an impact on me too, in a lot of different ways. So pretty cool to be back here and to have so many welcoming faces and a lot of time to catch up.
This team on the position player side is known for being really young and dynamic, but the rotation is really interesting. It might be one of the most, if not the most, veteran rotation baseball. Charlie's 41, Zach's been in the league 9 years, Tomo is one of the most decorated pitchers in Japan, and now you joining. How cool is that to be a part of a rotation that just has this much experience?
Yeah, last year I think you had to be 35 to get into the Cardinals rotation, so we had an age requirement. So, we had another one last year the same, and I think starting pitching and pitching in general can do a lot to add some consistency to the team. And I think it's one thing that we talked about in 2023 a lot was, we knew we had really quality, really high-level position players, and if the rotation and the pitching staff could give these guys an expectation of what they're going to get every day from the pitching staff, then they can really bring a lot of consistency to a team and take some pressure off them. And I don't think the goal has really changed in that regard. I think if you talk to anybody in this rotation, we want to be a rotation that's healthy and is going out there in 5-6 innings and taking outs away from the bullpen and making sure they're not covering a lot. But then giving these position players, a couple zeros at the beginning of the game to work with. Try to limit big innings so that they're not trying to feel like they have to fight back and put up a big number to get back in the game. All the things that lead to winning baseball, but when you have, position players like this that, score runs and play really good defense, you can just add some consistency to that, and these guys know what they're going to get. It's a big deal.
Are you looking forward to being teammates with Charlie for the first time, just given his reputation and his track record?
Yeah, absolutely. He's somebody that I've watched pitch a lot, and it's fun watching him pitch. There's just not many guys that have his stuff, and then also pitch to both sides and set hitters up, and I kind of geek out over watching guys do that. So I'm definitely excited. I heard a lot of really good things about him. So being teammates with Zach again is really exciting, and then to get to watch Charlie work, I'm really looking forward to it.